Thank you to Katrin for this introduction. I remember incidentally that plasma physics was a more straightforward affair than research and innovation. Here we have a very complex landscape, and I will do my best to explain how this part of the framework program, the new framework program, Horizon 2020, fits in and how you could participate. So, as you have already seen, Horizon, I'm sorry about the 4 screens, the gaps do fall over some critical but not too critical parts. As you have already heard, Horizon 2020 has 3 priorities. It also has some smaller parts that are outside the 3 priorities. Just to guide you through the various parts as briefly as I can, the total budget, excluding the Euratom part, is 77 billion euro over the 7 years. This is if you like, this is the actual budget that will be paid through calls. If you want to compare it to 2011 prices, if you want to compare it to FP7, then the corresponding figure would be roughly 70 billion. So compared to the roughly 50 billion of FP7, Horizon 2020 will have a budget of 70 million. So this is, if you like, the headline budget. But the total budget of calls will be 77 billion. Most of it is in the 3 priorities. And there is also about 6 billion for the parts on widening participation, science with and for society, the JRC, the Joint Research Centre actions, and the European Institute of Technology that sit outside the 3 priorities. Now, you have already seen the 3 priorities, and I will not say much more about them now, except to stress that they are meant to work seamlessly with each other, so they should not be seen as boxes. The general idea is that where one priority stops, another one starts, and there's potentially with a bit of overlap. But certainly we have developed Horizon 2020 trying not to leave any gaps in opportunities and in funding. The part I will be talking about is the industrial leadership, and in particular the part which we call LIGHT for short, leadership in enabling and industrial technologies. What this includes is the 6 key enabling technologies: nanotechnology, advanced materials, advanced manufacturing and processing, biotechnologies, micro and nanoelectronics, and photonics. A very large part of the ICT activities, although ICT activities are also in the 2 other priorities, and space. So all these things are within the light part, which is in red, and which accounts for most of the 17 billion euro in the industrial leadership. And also in that priority, there is access to risk finance, and I will say a few words about that later, and innovation in SMEs, not to be confused with the SME instrument, which is in fact in both priorities, industrial leadership and societal challenges. Now, I'm sure this is not the first time you hear that Horizon 2020 is different from previous framework programs. Even the DG, the Director General, is different in that it is now called, it's no longer called DG Research, it is called DG Research and Innovation. And this is not just a change in name, it means that we are determined to ensure that the funding in the framework program has an impact on innovation and competitiveness and growth. And we are also trying to work very closely with all other aspects of all other policy areas of the European Union to make sure that the framework program makes a very real contribution to policies. So these are a few of the new aspects. First of all, it is challenge based. In other words, it no longer focuses on particular technologies. Particular technologies are, if you like, the tools rather than ends in themselves, as appeared to be the case in previous framework programs. And because of this, there is more freedom for applicants to choose their approaches in general. Of course, it's not completely bottom up, except in the large part of the excellent science priority. But that said, it is much more open in terms of the technologies than previous framework programs were. So here we try to define the challenge, what the problem is that we are trying to solve, and then there is more freedom for applicants to choose their approach. And this is true even for the key enabling technologies, where inevitably we have to focus a bit more on particular technologies, but even there, the topics you will find are more open, less prescriptive. Then, of course, there is a strong emphasis on innovation, that is on applying the research results, both in the lifetime of relevant projects, but also afterwards. So we're very interested in the outcome of projects, what happens after a successful project. And because of this, we have two main types of project. The type of project that we called collaborative project in the past. There are two types. One type is the research and innovation actions, where the EU funding is 100%. And there are innovation actions with 70% funding in general, which is for activities that are in general closer to the markets. Because the topics are less prescriptive, there is now even more emphasis than before on the expected impact. The expected impact is not totally new, but now we place even more emphasis on that, and we and the experts will expect to see it addressed in proposals. Now, the expected impact always caused some difficulties, because, of course, it was not about what was being proposed, but about what the likely outcome would be. But here we are not talking about looking into the future. Expected impact means is really about the plans for exploiting the results of the project. That's all it is. So it's not a mystery. It is not about trying to see into the future. It is to see, for example, what the likely markets for the technologies are, how they will be commercialized after a successful project, and where additional funding might come from, and so on and so forth. This is essentially the expected impact. Another difference is that we have a more strategic approach. So instead of concentrating on topics and having lots of different topics with a new batch of topics every year, we have a more strategic approach with 2-year work programs. So already the work program that was published earlier this month covers 2 years, 2014 and 2015. This is to give, not only to have a more strategic approach, to take a longer term view on how things are moving in research and innovation, but also to give more certainty, more certainty to proposals, so that one can begin to prepare even for 2015 topics. Then in the societal challenges, we have the so-called focus areas, that are areas where the topics of the first 2 years are concentrated. And finally, another important issue is that the various cross-cutting issues, as we call them, things like the social sciences, international cooperation, gender issues are mainstreamed in the topics, because, of course, they are an important part of policy. With regard to international cooperation, Horizon 2020 is in principle completely open. This is not totally new, because FP7 was also in principle open, but now we have a renewed emphasis on international cooperation in essentially all areas of Horizon 2020, even where we are not saying that the topic is particularly suitable. Now, what we mean by international cooperation, incidentally, is not what you might think. International cooperation in the context of EU is cooperation with countries outside the EU, because, of course, cooperation with countries within the EU is old hat. That is not international in our language. So it is collaboration with countries outside the EU. So this is now the part on the second priority on industrial leadership. I already said that it addresses the 6 key enabling technologies for which there is an underlying Commission policy. It includes a very large part of ICT activities and space. And the work program that I will be talking about covers the 4 of the 6 key enabling technologies, the ones that are highlighted there. So it's the old NMP area, but it includes the biotechnology, key enabling technology. That said, a lot of biotechnology you will find de facto under the societal challenge 2. It's about food, agriculture, and blue growth. But the KET part is in this part of the work program, and of course a large part of it will be in the joint technology initiative for the bio-based industries, of which I will say a few words later. Now, in the industrial leadership part, we fund in general key enabling technologies. Why do we fund these technologies? Not because they are exciting, which they are, but because we see them as a fundamental tool for recovering from the economic crisis, making European industry more competitive, increasing manufacturing activity in Europe, which in turn is we see as being vital for the European economy. So one policy goal that if you are interested in policy, you will have seen in last year's update on the industrial policy is that we want to see manufacturing in Europe accounting for 20% of GDP. As at present, it has fallen to something like 15 or 16%. So we like to boost manufacturing in Europe because we think that it is a very important factor for growth. So key enabling technologies try to do that by giving to European industry the tools that it will need to compete, both to compete in existing markets, but also to exploit new markets. And of course, to find new solutions to the so-called societal challenges in health, energy, and so on. So we, like in FP7, we place emphasis on the industrial dimension. That means, it does not mean that all the funding goes to industry. No. What it means is that what we do is led and guided, inspired, if you like, by industry. So we try to fund the kind of technologies that has a good chance of being taken up in industry and making it more competitive. It does not mean that it is not open to research and academia, of course not, and I will show you some figures later. All it means is that the kind of research that is done in this part is done with a medium-term goal of boosting European competitiveness. And for this reason, the activities are developed through consultations with industry. We have the so-called European technology platforms that are essentially bodies bringing industry from particular sectors together. And in particular in NMP, we have and also some other parts of the framework program. This is not entirely new in Horizon. We have the public-private partnerships, PPPs, whereby industry in particular sectors like factories of the future or energy efficient buildings come together, develop roadmaps, and then the Commission, with the help of the program committee, chooses some of the priorities and funds them. And this is, if you like, the public part of the public-private partnership. But industry commits to making further investments, not only within the projects that are funded, but also beyond the projects. This is a general idea. So in general, we are trying to leverage the investment. So by making certain public investment, we trust that the industry will make a further investment, and that all this will help make industry more competitive, as well as solving societal problems. This is the general idea. Now, as I've already said, funded projects will be outcome-oriented. So there is, we are becoming increasingly interested in what happens after a project, and we will be assessing this as well as we can. This is not entirely new. The expected impact was always an evaluation criterion for as far back as I can remember, but we're giving it a new focus now. And as I said, it is not a mystery. It is slightly more tricky to both to propose and to evaluate than the, if you like, the R&D part of a project. But it is not a mystery. It is about what plans there are to take a project, the project results further, and what one could do to bring them to the market and to bring them to bear on practical problems. Now, I already mentioned the key enabling technologies, 6 of them. The reason why we are supporting it and why we have a strong policy behind them is because on the one hand, they promise to make EU industry more competitive, and on the other hand, they are capital and knowledge intensive, so they need a lot of public investment. And they cut across many sectors, so hence the name. So they are the tools with which one can solve many different problems. In a way, it's not the first time we fund key enabling technologies, because of course in previous framework programs there was funding for all these things, but now we are bringing it together under a unified policy. And there is a CET high-level group of high-level experts from industry and academia and the research world, which advises the Commission on the overall, not on the topics, but on the overall priorities, on the overall strategy for developing key enabling technologies. And the issues we are trying to address, apart from the technologies themselves, is this. Europe has a strong position in science, everyone knows that. Perhaps something that not everyone knows is that it's also very strong in patenting. There are many European patents, but there is not so much manufacturing. So the manufacturing related to key enabling technologies in Europe does not reflect the share of patents. That is a problem. So one dramatic example that we always use is that of solar technology, photovoltaics. There, Europe holds something like 1/3 of all patents, but close to 0% of the manufacturing these days. Why? Because it is all in China. And there are many other examples, somewhat less dramatic, but it's the same picture everywhere. You will find that in many areas, Europe has a very good share of the patents, often 1/3, but not a good enough share of the manufacturing. And we feel that this is a problem not only with regard to jobs in Europe, but with regard to mastering these technologies in the future. So what we are trying to do now, and in fact we started doing it in FP7, is to add the kind of activities that are needed to bridge the so-called valley of death, as some call it. That is the gap between R&D, what was traditional R&D, and the kind of thing that is the kind of technology that is ready for the market, or at least ready for private investment. Some people call this valley of death because there was neither public nor private funding in that area. And that is a gap we are now trying to fill with Horizon 2020. And in fact, we started doing that in NMP. We started doing that in the last 2 years of FP7. The general idea is to go from lab to industry to the markets. But of course, Horizon 2020 is only one of the tools. It has to be seen as one of the tools for doing that. So the main priorities for KETS, for the key enabling technologies within Horizon, is to have this technology development and validation by following strategic research agendas and ensuring that there is industrial engagement afterwards, because it's no good just spending the public money, even if you spend it on good projects, if there is no impetus after that. We also place a lot of, we are focusing on so-called cross-cutting KETs that are actually, or multi-KETs. They are combinations of different key enabling technologies with an appropriate manufacturing capacity, because of course this is what many successful products are based on. It's a combination of key enabling technologies, which needs, of course, a new approach. It doesn't need just physicists or just chemists or just electrical engineers or what have you. It needs many different disciplines and many different approaches to come together, including, of course, things like industrial design and so on and so forth. And to these cross-cutting KETs, we intend to spend 30% of the KET budget, which is around 6 billion. And of course, in turn, we hope that this work will enable applications to societal challenges, and there will be support in the societal challenges for these key enabling technologies. Because the societal challenges, as I said, will not be will be technology agnostic, if you like. So if there are key enabling technologies that can solve one or more societal challenges, then they have a home also in the societal challenges. This is a very important point. So if, for example, you are a nanotechnology expert, you should look not only in the NMP part, what we call loosely NMP part, in leadership in this part of Horizon. You should be looking upstream to the excellent science, and you should be looking downstream, if you like, at the societal challenges. This is an important message. And of course, Horizon works essentially the same in all parts. This is one of the things that we have been trying to do, to make it as uniform as possible in terms of rules, the overall approach, and so on. Now I will say a few words about the public-private partnerships, because these take up something like half of the budget in this part of Horizon, what we loosely call NMP. And also because even in the other parts of the leadership in industrial technologies, we have an analogous approach that, as I said, it is guided, informed, if you like, not guided, but informed by industry. So I would like to explain in a few more words how this works. So as I said, industry plays a leading role, but not the only role. In other words, it does not tell us which topics to fund. No, it's much more complicated, but also more transparent than that. It comes up with a roadmap, which is not only for the Commission to follow, it is for the whole industry, and there are a number of roadmaps that are by now very mature. They're all in the public domain. They're very nice publications, if I might say so myself. And they explain what the challenges are in each sector. Now, and then the Commission, with the help of the Program Committee, which represents the Member States, takes priorities out of that and turns them into topics, which you then see in the work program. That is the public part of the public-private partnership. So far, I have been talking about the so-called contractual public-private partnerships that are implemented within Horizon. And later I will say a few more words about a different kind of PPP, but the general idea is the same. And what we are trying to do here is to implement these roadmaps or to do our part to make the public contribution to their implementation. And also to make sure that all players can participate. So they are SME friendly, like the rest of the framework program. The NMP part in particular has always been extremely SME friendly if you look at the participation of SMEs. And the other thing that I would like to stress is that it's not a closed shop. This is a very common accusation that if you listen to industry, a bit like lobbyists, you listen to let's say a handful of industrial representatives in each sector, and then you do as I say, and then everyone else is out. No, nothing could be further from the truth. Because first, these groups, the industrial advisory groups that come up with the roadmaps are very open. They're open to everyone who is interested. And even more importantly than that, you will see that in practice, the participation in successful projects is only 30% of that comes from the people, from the players who participate in the corresponding advisory group. 70% is from players who have not participated, who are outside, who have not played a role. And this is, of course, how it is meant to be. It's a very important message. It's not a closed shop. A, you can and you should participate in a relevant group. And B, even more importantly, even if you do not participate, there will be opportunities for you that are genuine opportunities, especially now that the topics are less prescriptive than they used to be in the past. Now, another point with regard to key enabling technologies are the so-called technology readiness levels. I said that we are trying to bridge the so-called valley of death. And to do that, we have begun to use as a tool the technology readiness levels that are simply a rough indicator of how mature a technology is. It's not a direct indicator of how close to the market it is, although you can see it as a prerequisite, but it is an indicator of where a particular topic or a particular project sits. So there are 9 of these levels, starting from 1, which are basic principles, basic science, and ending up at 9, whereby you have integrated systems that are essentially ready, if not for the market, certainly ready in the technological sense. And traditionally, the framework programs have addressed levels 1, 2, 3, or 4. FP7, the NMP part of FP7, has spanned from, I would say, 3 to 5, and in the last 2 years it touched 6. Now in Horizon, the center of weight, if you like, is at technology readiness levels 5 and 6. That is the validation, the all-important validation in industrially relevant environments. But here I have to make 2 things clear. First, it still does not exclude players other than industry, because we say industrially relevant environments. We want to bring the technologies further. We want demonstrators and pilot lines, but of course this does not exclude academics. It does not exclude researchers. Of course, they have to work together if they are to be successful. And the other thing I need to stress is that you are still not that close to the market when you are at technology readiness levels 5 and 6, or even 8, because of course here we're talking about the maturity of a particular key enabling technology as a building block. So this is what you should bear in mind when you look at the topics. All the topics in the NMP part now have a particular technology readiness level associated with it, or they give a range. It is not meant to be prescriptive. It is only meant to give an idea. And the last thing I would like to say is that if you see a particular technology readiness level, typically the expression we use is this topic focuses on TRL 5, say. It does not mean that everything else is ineligible. All it means is that this is what the target is. But if you think that lower TRLs have to be addressed within the project to reach the higher TRL, then that's legitimate. So in practice, as I already said, we will have two funding rates, like in the rest of Horizon 2020. The 100% funding, the so-called research and innovation actions, cover TRLs 3 to 6, and the 70% funding, the so-called innovation actions, span TRLs 5 to 7. And you see there is an overlap here, and the reason for the overlap is that the TRL is not a sole criterion, but how close something is to the market. And the other thing I would like to say in this context is that non-profit participants in a given project can claim 100% even if it is an innovation project. So the non-profit organizations, in general universities and the public research centers, can claim 100% funding even for their activities, even if they are within an innovation action where the funding for the profit-making participants is 70%. On top of that, there is 25%, like everywhere else in Horizon 2020, for the indirect costs. There's a flat rate to make life simple. One of the many simplifications in Horizon 2020. As I said, we will have many cross-cutting CATs, and if you look at the topics, you will see that several have been flagged as cross-cutting CATs, also through the search engine that Catherine showed you on the screen earlier. And I would like to stress once again about the seamless coverage. Very often people come to us and say, but in the past you had this and that topic in NMP and now I don't see it. I don't see, for example, self-assembly in nanotechnology, which is incidentally the thing I was a project officer for when I was in the nanotechnology unit. And the answer to that is it has not disappeared. It still has a home. Its main home is in the future and emerging technologies in the excellent science. Even if you don't see a topic called that, it does have a home. And remember two things in the context of excellent science. First thing is that this part has seen a huge increase with regard to the past. So the increase in the excellent science alone is bigger than the budget for key enabling technologies. So please do not think only of this part of the framework program. Think of the continuum. Think of the excellent science and think of the societal challenges when you think about where your work might fit. We did prepare the ground in FP7 with the first pilots and demonstrators, some of which are now bearing fruit. There are already some examples of successful projects. In fact, the very first pilots we started in nanotechnology in the first year of FP7, we were the pioneers in that area. At that time, we were not thinking about CATs and TRLs, but that is ultimately what we were addressing. I've already said how public-private partnerships work. Here it's I'm just showing a map of them. There are a number of first of all, there are two different approaches to public-private partnerships. One is the joint technology initiatives that are, if you like, institutional PPPs. They sit outside the work program and they are legal entities that are set up following a decision of the Council and the Parliament, whereas the contractual PPPs sit within the work program. They're implemented through the work program with ordinary topics in the way I explained. In both cases, the policy goal is the same. There are advantages and disadvantages, but the policy goal is the same. And within the NMP part, we have 3 of the 8 contractual public-private partnerships, namely factories of the future, energy efficient buildings, and the sustainable process industry, or SPIRE. But there are 5 other contractual PPPs that are sitting in the ICT part. One of the societal challenges, and even in excellent science in the case of high performance computing. The general idea is the same for all 8. Then a few words in about other funding sources. I said outcome of projects is important, so you should not be thinking only about Horizon. You should be thinking about other sources of funding. One of them is risk finance, which is supported, will be supported by Horizon 2020. Here we're talking not about grants, but about loans and equity, which is, if you like, facilitated using FP7 budget. So you don't, Horizon 2020 budget. So you do not come to Horizon 2020 to apply for this. You go to the European Investment Bank with a project idea, and the Horizon 2020 contribution to it allows the European Investment Bank and other investors to make the kind of investment that is needed for industry to take its work further and to go beyond what Horizon 2020 covers in terms of grants. The other very important source of funding are the so-called structural and investment funds, where there is, I don't have enough time for all the details now, but you will see in the work program that such synergies are mentioned and strongly encouraged. So I will just say a few words about how we envisage that, because it's a very frequently asked question these days. Now, the structural and investment funds are in the hands of regions and the member states. They are a large part of the EU budget, as you know, but they are, if you like, channeled through the regions. And a lot of emphasis is placed on innovation and competitiveness related investments. So inevitably, there are very good opportunities in general for funding from the structural and investment funds. And there is a concept called smart specialization, whereby regions are encouraged to specialize and promote those areas that are promising for their regions using their allocation of structural and investment funds. Now, in the work program, you will see in the context of several topics that this thing is mentioned, and the wording is always the same. What we are asking proposers to think about possibilities. We are not asking proposers to secure funding, nor are we asking them to come up with combined projects that rely on funding from both Horizon 2020 and the structural funds. No, that would have been impossible, both practically and legally speaking. But what we are asking proposers is to think about it and to, if appropriate, to have an initial business plan that includes that. An initial business plan, of course, is needed anyway for the reasons I explained. But in some cases, in many cases, it will be appropriate to think about that. And then, if that is the case, we would like to see it in the proposal, and then we would like to see it developed in the project. But the proposal is standalone, and the project, if funded, will be standalone. This I must stress. So we have played very carefully, worked very hard on these words. It's only a few sentences, but I can tell you that a lot of time and thought has been expended on them. They may seem slightly awkward, but the idea is to send a strong message, but at the same time not make it prescriptive. But think about it if you are a proposer, because it's a very important source of funding in many cases. Then think also about the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, which I mentioned at the beginning, and which stresses the integrating the three sides of the knowledge triangle: education and skills, research and business. It's already active, and of interest to this part of the framework program, there will be a new so-called knowledge and innovation community on added value manufacturing, amongst the other interesting knowledge and innovation communities. The idea is that they bring together different players, encouraging the so-called open innovation. That is innovation done by many players, not only by industry itself for its own needs, but a wider ecosystem, if you like, where many more players play a role. Okay, let me show this slide first. This is a participation of Sweden in FP7, the NMP part of theme of FP7. There were 373 participations, which is out of something like 10,000. So this is about 4% of the participations, which is twice the share of Sweden's share of the EU population, which is a good result. It reflects the Swedish investment in research and innovation. And of these participations, 41% came from industry, which is very close to the NMP average. And also incidentally reflects, illustrates what the point I was making earlier, that the NMP theme also in Horizon is not only for industry, it's also for academia. And the rest, of course, came from academia research centers and public authorities that in general participate in the IRA-nets. The final figure is, I think, 134 million, taking all FP7 projects in NMP into account. And whether you look at the number of participations or the share of project coordination or the share of the budget, it's roughly 4% of the total, corresponding total. And here is my last slide, are the deadlines of the relevant calls, quite a few of them, because some parts of the NMP call are in 2 stages, and other parts like the PPPs and the coordination and support actions that are small projects to support policy are in 1 stage. Of course, all these details are on the participant portal. Here I have a few more slides that I will let you look in your own time, which show you what are the general priorities and the general ideas behind each part of the NMP and the PPP calls in this part of the work program. So you will see that the NMP call, for example, has 6 areas. This is the first one of those, bridging the gap between nanotechnology research and the markets, which has pilot lines for nanotechnology, and so on and so forth. For each area and for each PPP, you will see what the general ideas are, which are important to keep in mind. I will let you look at those slides in your own time and come back with questions. I will try at the end to answer questions, but if you have questions about particular topics, I may have to consult the expert or experts on those topics. But thank you.
Thank you very much for your excellent presentation. And now it's time to open up for questions. Please raise your hand, and then we can take, then you will get a microphone.
Hello, I'm just wondering, what about intellectual property rights to the results when you do cooperations with industry?
Right. Well, that has not changed very much. The intellectual property rights belong to the participant or participants who have been responsible for them. If you're asking about where they can be exploited, that is also open, although of course we choose topics with manufacturing in Europe in mind, but this is not prescriptive. So of course we hope that in the fullness of time there will be more manufacturing in Europe as a result of our funding. But of course we are not being prescriptive, there are no rules about that. You will see that in some topics the mention of manufacturing, there are certain soft mentions of manufacturing in Europe. Certainly in the ICT part you will see this. And of course, as you already know, the underlying policy has something to do with manufacturing in Europe. But this does not come through the work program. It is not a legal prerequisite. And the intellectual property rights are essentially as they used to be. Incidentally, now of course there is the new European patent that makes it easier to have EU-wide patents, which is a related issue. But as far as Horizon 2020 is concerned, IPR belongs to the participants.
Thank you. Thank you for a very nice presentation, both of you. The question I had regards the second to last slide that you put up. In the biotechnology area, there was a first stage and a second stage, and the dates were given. Could you explain a little bit more about what the first stage entails and what the second stage entails?
Yes, good question. This part is not very different from the two-stage evaluations in FP7, for those who are familiar. The general idea is to make life simpler for proposers. So you come up with your initial idea and how you will implement it, not exactly how you will implement it, but how what your general approach will be, and also what the first outline of the expected impact. That is what is evaluated in the first stage. And at this stage, it is a simple go or no go, as we say. So either you are invited to submit a second stage proposal, which is a full proposal, just like the proposal in a single stage evaluation, or you are not. And what we are trying to do, of course, is to have a reasonably high selection rate in the second stage, so that people do not have to prepare large proposals without a strong chance of being funded. So if you look at the figures, you will see that in FP7, the success rate, the selection rate in the second stage was at least a third, or if not closer to 50%. That is what we are trying to do. And of course, it takes a bit longer. On the other hand, many participants welcome this. In the case of the PPPs, it is not used because their urgency and the short time scale is even more important than in other parts of the work program. But this is how two-stage evaluations work.
We have one question on Twitter.
Yes, the question is about publishing the results. Is there any thoughts about open access or open data publishing of the results?
Yes, another good question. This is there is a pilot for open access to both data and publications, as you say. Not in this part of Horizon 2020, but in other parts where the presumption is that if you have a project in that part, you will participate in the pilot and you will use open access except where it is stated otherwise. This does not apply to this part of Horizon 2020, the NMP plus B part, if you like. But of course, it can be used.
I have a question regarding how much impact will the previous project from FP7 have when evaluating the new proposals for example, the NMP calls in Horizon 2020. I just give you an example. There has been projects within FP7 about nanomedicine, and there is now a call about pilot lines to scale up nano processes.
There is no impact. This is a simple answer. Everything is evaluated on its own merits. Of course, if you have relevant experience that happens to have come from a previously funded project, so be it, but there is no institutional memory. Absolutely not.
In one slide you, hello?
Sorry.
In one slide you say Horizon 2020 is different, and that's really important, I understand. And it says less prescriptive topics, and it also says focus areas, bring together different technologies. Could you give some examples of different technologies within the NMP brought together to get some understanding?
Well, yes, one example is pilot lines for nanomedicine. There is a topic under the applications to health part, which is about upscaling the production of health-related nanoparticles. And so here is an example that brings together different enabling technologies, biotechnology, nanotechnology, and even advanced materials with a manufacturing capacity with the aim to address a societal challenge, health in this case. My other point was that within the societal challenges, even though you might not see your particular technology mentioned by name, you will see a topic that may be addressed using that technology. And the message is look at such topics, which are, as I said, relatively non-prescriptive, and see whether what you're doing can be part of the solution. And then think of a consortium and make a proposal to the corresponding societal challenge. So not only the NMP part, but certainly the NMP part will also fund this cross-cutting approach to create the base, if you like, the foundation.
More questions around? I have a question regarding, you said that the topics will be slightly broader and that you have to sort of have a look at the impact, what is to be achieved. What do you sort of think about the success rate? Will there be a lot more applications for each topic, or?
Well, they are less prescriptive. They're not necessarily broader. Of course, we will see that when we get the proposals. My guess is that it will not be very different because of course, we are less prescriptive as to the technologies, which we all think is a good thing, but we are more demanding in other ways. We are looking, for example, at higher technology readiness levels. So I think that in practice we will get similar numbers of credible proposals. And as for the expected impact that you also touched on, what we want to see, what experts will want to see, is a credible plan. We do not expect people to look into the future in 20 years' time and tell us what will be happening with regard to that technology. No, all we are asking for is a plan about what might happen after a successful project. And let me say this also in passing, that we often see projects, and I kept seeing them in my life, in my previous life as a project officer, that were successful projects. They were very interesting, they were successful, they came up with the goods at the end, they got a final payment and everyone was happy. And what they would say at the last meeting of the project would be, we did some great R&D, here are the results, and now it would be very nice if we could have another topic so I would get another 5 million and do more R&D. And that's okay, but what is even better is if you then know how you will commercialize, what spin-offs there might be, what products there might be, what you will do next, even if there is still some way to the market. This is what we would like to see, both in proposals. In proposals, we would like to see some ideas about that, and in projects, we would like to see it happening, perhaps through a work package of the project.
I think we have a question.
You mentioned that this is the course is basically for the 2014-15 for 2 years. There will be a new course in the future years, and there are some area may not be included in the current course. And my question is that what is the most effective way to express our, for example, hope that area will be in the future course?
Right. Well, there are many fora, of course. I already mentioned the European technology platforms and the PPPs, the public-private partnerships. So if your area falls there, then that is the right forum to be involved in. And of course, there is also the program committee that is there to represent the member states. And Ulf is a member. So what happens is you come up with your proposals, and those eventually all filter through. Of course, you have to bear in mind that we cannot do anything and everything. There's always pressure to have more and more topics. And of course, what happens if you have more and more topics is that more people go away disappointed. because of course there is less money for the more topics. So you should think about that, and you should also think about you should not necessarily expect to see your area mentioned by name. This is what the point I was making earlier. There are opportunities elsewhere that are not mentioned by name because the topics are now less prescriptive. So think about where your area might fit and with whom you could collaborate to address a problem that you see in the work program. But certainly there are the mechanisms I described that are as open as possible for people to express their needs and preferences and ideas. And they are taken seriously.
I have a question. I understand that there will be no more contractual negotiations. Can you elaborate a little about that, and what do you think about the success rate if you are not able to have a negotiation?
Yes, as you know, as you probably know, we are striving to reduce the time to grant, because it was very often a problem in previous framework programs that people had to wait too long before the grant was signed and their projects could start. So now the Commission has made very serious political commitment, which is reflected in the work programs, to have 8 months from the deadline, time to grant. And of course, to do that, one of the things you have to do is negotiations have to be a lot simpler. So essentially, as Ulf said, there will be no negotiations, which means that you have to get proposals essentially right the first time, because the experts will know this and they will not want to give a high score to something that has flaws. So this is a message. What it will do to the success rate, of course, I don't know. Ultimately, proposals compete with each other. It will be very interesting to see what happens, but it is an important message that you have to get proposals right, or as right as you can at the proposal stage, because there are virtually no opportunities to improve them in the negotiation stage.
A follow-up on that about the abolishing of the negotiation stage. One part of that is to gather administrative data about the participants. Now this, I guess that sort of data still must be available for the Commission, which to my mind means that all these data need to be collected at the proposal stage, meaning that there will be quite a bit of increased administration effort at the proposal stage, like identifying persons who may sign a contract, who is administratively responsible, and so on and so forth.
Why are you saying there will be an increased load?
Yeah, well, because as the situation has been in FP7, FP6, there is a minimum of administrative data collected at the proposal stage. With a PIC number identified, actually it's only the name of the scientist in charge. Whereas for the GPF, the grant preparation forms, we have been asked to identify preferably 2 persons who may sign the contract, and also an administrative responsible person, which means data, positions, telephone numbers, and email address for at least 3 persons. Okay, that can be inserted in the proposal stage, will take a little bit of extra effort, but also will mean quite a little bit of extra risk because of the lead time from the deadline to the launch of the grant agreement, because persons might change positions and so on. So I can foresee a little bit of extra hassle at the stage and more hassle during the project.
Well, potentially, but this is a kind of thing that can easily be sorted. When we say that the negotiation is limited, we're not saying that everything will be written in stone at the proposal stage. No, what we're saying is that there will be no scope for making improvements, major changes to the proposal. But of course, names and things like that, of course.
Hello. I was wondering about this shortening the time to contract. I know for a fact that in the SME instrument there will be no evaluation search report put out to the participants. How about in the rest of Horizon? I think it's really nice to know why you don't get accepted, so to speak. The report has been good, but I also understand that it takes time to prepare it. So will there be any or not?
No, in the case of the, certainly in some cases there is a, if you like, a more streamlined approach, but no, in the main part of NMP, excluding the contribution to the SME instrument, we intend and we will give full evaluation summary reports even at the first stage.
Oh, very good.
This is the NMP, the option that NMP, the NMP part chose. In this respect, it will be like in the past, exactly the same.
Hi, I wonder about single stage and two-stage proposal templates. What time are you going to release them?
My understanding is that they are available, if not today, extremely soon, because I think the templates were with our Director General. That was the last news I had before I left Brussels.
And guide for applicants too?
The guide for applicants is actually, if you like, embedded in, it's simpler, because instead of having separate guides for applicants for each call, as we did in the past, which was rather confusing, there is a single guide for applicants now that you can also access through all the calls, and
thank you.
along with the forms and the parts B.
I guess there's time for a final question. Kurt?
More admin stuff. When will the proposal engine open?
When will the
machinery for the proposals?
I think it will be open as soon as the parts B and as you call it, the machinery is there, which in a matter of days is my understanding.
Okay, with this I would like to give you a small Christmas present.
Oh, thank you very much.
Swedish typical handicraft, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. There might be as well an opportunity to ask more questions after the next